Feroza. Welcome to the Creation for Liberation podcast. I'm so grateful and proud with you to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, and I feel proud and grounded in this moment. Yeah.
Beautiful. So you are someone I know to be very tuned in to spirit, to the mysticism in creativity and in music making. So I'd love to hear about your process, your creative process, and particularly in relation to this new album that you have created and stewarded recently.
Yeah. I think part of why I feel so grounded in this moment is I know what you're about. I know the mission of Mosaic Eye, and I feel like I don't have to water myself down and over explain. My creative process is a spiritual one. And even as I say that, and even though I know it to be true, there's a part of me that's like, you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. But I am aware and familiar with my muse. The word that I would use is the spirit who walks with me. She's a person. And at this stage in my creative journey, I have a relationship with her, which is like any relationship, fought for. We've been through the weeds together. And the way that songwriting and music making has been for me is one of two ways, really. One is when I feel so much feeling and emotion that it rises up in me like water, and I have to pour it out, and I pour it out into a song because words don't come easily to me, but images and music and melodies do. So I will write a song and realize, I'm sad, or I'm confused after the song is written. So a song is born from that just pure water emotion. And then other times she comes knocking. And at first she would barrel me over and be like, write a song now. But now we've formed our relationship of communication where she'll sort of gently knock on the door of my mind and be like, hey, I have some words. And I'll be like, okay, I'm washing dishes or something. Um, Elizabeth Gilbert has this analogy of, talking to the idea and saying, hey, I'm busy right now, but I will come back to you. Don't run away. And I formed that sort of relationship with her. I can say like, give me 5 minutes or wait until I get home, or I will pause, whip out my phone and just hum something. Lately, I don't need to do that because she waits and I can feel her waiting, which is very similar to getting friends together in a car and they're all waiting for you and you're like, okay, I gotta finish this quickly because they're waiting. It's been kind of like that, which is a very dynamic and interesting process. But she gives me songs, and at first it was just for me to process and to get wisdom. And then over time, I remember the song that the message was clear. Here is the song, and it is for the world. The song called Tell Me Why on my first album. And I was simultaneously freaked by the beauty of the song and freaked by the what I was hearing that it should be for the world because I'm an independent private person. I'm not with a record label. Nobody's asking for me to produce music, but I feel it in my body, and working with you has really taught me to really tune into it. I had already been, but working with Mosaic Eye, particularly CSA, really, really taught me to really, really, really take it seriously.
Mm-mm.
Um, and so and so songs come to me like that, and I've produced and made an album and an EP and a couple singles. And when songs come, I just sort of let them be and let them talk to me and tell me when they're ready to be out. And with this album, The River Whispered, it came the summer of 2020 when I was at a river. And so the river did whisper to me songs. And then I put it down as I do because it just needed to simmer and life happens as it does. And then medical trauma happened to me 2 years later that really just knocked me off my feet and blew out. It didn't blow out. It almost blew out my creative fire to the point of embers. And that was around the time that I found the Creative Somatic Alchemy, and I was like, you know what? I need some heat. I need something. I don't know. I need something. And that was the journey back to my creativity and myself. Um, I was telling you earlier that that traumatic event was like a big boulder, I think, just sort of blocking maybe 98% of my creative flow. And I think I just needed a lot of help and a lot of extra water to push down the boulder. And I think that's what CSA and Conscious Creators was just, yeah, when things happen like that, you need community.
Mm.
Um, and early on in Creative Somatic Alchemy, you sent us a home play with the video where you teach us about the creative flow and the pollutants that might block the river. So you've given me this analogy to sort of work with, and watching that video made me think, yeah, I have some river songs. What happened to those? Let me just listen to them. And then it sort of, reignited that flame. And
Yeah.
then the rest, I think, is history. I decided to oh, a song came through. My song Bring Me Back. That song came through not long after I really reflected on that video. And that song is about the river, 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 river. As you flow, tell me all I need to know. Flood my banks and drench my soul. Wash away this human soul. That comes from my reflection of your video, Chetna. I don't know if you know, but I'm telling you now.
That's amazing. Well, I have to say that Clarissa Pinkola Estes from Women Who Run with the Wolves gave me and so many of us, the metaphor of cleaning out the colonial pollutants or cleaning out the pollutants in the Creative River. And yeah, I added the word colonial because I think that's so much of what she is saying and how I interpret it to be. So I love it. There's so many teachers present in your music.
There's a lineage of teachers, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear so much trust between you and your muse that you've cultivated over time that she can wait for you. She knows you're not just going to abandon her. She can wait any amount of time that you need for you to stop and listen. How else have you fostered that trust with your muse?
Mm. Directly talking to her and getting used to that because there is my, I guess we could call it my colonial mind, my conditioned mind of you're not talking to anyone, or I guess my inner critic, you're not talking to anyone, like you're a crazy lady, these spirits don't exist. And on the other hand, knowing that no, there's a very real spirit person lady who is really cool and really intimidating, but like in a cool way. She is right here. So what are you gonna choose? Talking to her, getting a feel of her vibe, and also over time, the songs that she's given me has really healed me and given me refuge and has given refuge to my listeners as well. So seeing that outcome makes me trust her and trust the message. And so when she comes, I'm like, oh, hey, okay, like let's go. Let's do this because we've done this before.
Mhm.
Yeah. So over time, it's been a couple years. At first it was freaky and she'd wake me up at 3 in the morning. And I know that's common across different cultures, waking up at ungodly hours to write music. And I'd be like, why? And now she lets me sleep. I met an elder a few years ago who actually she was the one who taught me that you can negotiate with the spirits. And this was a conversation in a different context, but she was like, you can negotiate with the spirits. And another elder in my culture told me you have to speak to them nicely and politely because they're people too. And so these are things that I've incorporated in building this relationship, building trust, as with flesh and blood people.
Mm. That's really beautiful to know that there is a mutuality and an exchange that's happening, that it's not just one way. So it is a dialogue and a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the 3 a.m., wake ups. That's in yoga, they call it Brahma Muhurta.
Mm.
It's the time when the veil is thin. And I know that in many cultures, that hour is sacred and special.
It is. I don't like it.
It's
And
very
we had
convenient.
conversations about that. I could do sunrise, I could do dusk, I could do middle of the day, but it has to be very important if it's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And she respects that, which is cool. Because she knows, I think she knows I'm serious. Now
Mm,
that she knows I'm serious, we can negotiate our schedules.
mm. How else do you negotiate with your muse?
I wonder if I do. I was reflecting earlier today that I've become quite obedient, and I suppose this is a marker of the spiritual journey where my life now revolves around my intuition. So unless I really am engaged in something, um, off the world, like my day job or banking, or unless I'm engaged in something um tangible. There is always, I've discovered for myself, there is always time to pause and
Mm,
whip out my guitar or find a loop or just write down. I walk with a notebook and pen. I have no excuse not to pause. And songs that come from her don't take long either. They
mm,
are direct downloads. People say download, but it's download suggests like top down. I wouldn't use download because she's right here. So
mm,
whisperings.
mhm,
It's direct dictation, actually. I don't know about school in the US, but where I went to school in Belize, we had to listen to the teacher and then write down what she was saying. So dictation class, songwriting from her. There's a difference between the songs from me, which are and then songs from her, which are like, whoa, the heavenly chorus. And this is not just me saying, but other people being like, hey, this song is anointed. Like, what witchcraft is this? And I'll be like, yeah, it's
How
from
can you
me, but it's
tell?
not from me.
How can you tell the difference? How do you feel it? How do you know it?
Look at me. It's in my body. Songs for me tend to be a little bit more cerebral and a bit more emotional. Songs from her, I get the goosebumps. I get this lightheaded feeling. And for the listeners who can't see, I'm like doing a little spidey sense thing on my forehead. I get like a spidey sense on the like my third eye. Um, Sometimes I start to feel really like giddy, like whoa, something cool is about to happen. Yeah. There's a very visceral feeling in my body of something being birthed. I've never given birth to children, but birthing a song, I would imagine is a something is passing through, and
Mm,
I feel it in my forehead and in my like below my neck.
hmm.
So I
Yeah.
know. And that feeling is part of what makes me pause and sit down because I know. I also know too, I'm more in tune with my mission of stewarding these songs. I now understand that it is an honor to receive the songs that I do, and it is my mission. It is my purpose here in this world. There is a lot of heaviness and sadness. And when I used to perform back in the day, I used to warn the audience, if you're afraid of your feelings, like walk out the door, go use the bathroom. Because I've discovered a lot of people are not willing to go there. And maybe they're not ready or it's just not the time. Like, who wants to break down at an open mic? That's not cool. But I feel that we need to feel. And
Mm,
in a world, especially here in the Caribbean, carnival time, the music is like rum. I never knew so many songs could be about rum, the way that this country worships rum. And fine, drink your rum, but let's also like what does your soul say? What's your soul say? What is your heart saying? Like let's ask these questions of ourselves. And a
yeah.
lot of people, nah, bro, I'm not ready. But many more people are thirsty for this. And I try to focus on that. I think about my own thirst for this, and then I use that to remember that other people are thirsty for this. Because again, inner critic is like, nobody asked for this,
Right.
but
That's so
my
funny.
soul asked for this. And
Yeah.
who am I going to put on the pedestal? The good pedestal, not the bad pedestal. You know, yeah, my soul.
I'm so glad you said that because yeah, it's so easy. I've heard this so many times. Like nobody asked me to do this. Nobody's asking for this. Yet there's such a deep, profound calling to do something, to share something, to express something, even if it's not externally coming from like other humans. Something internal or alongside you in a spirit form, or the land is like beckoning you to share something. So I love that you recognize that, yeah, there's not only recognized that, but acted on it and honored that calling. With all that is happening in the world, the amount of suffering that is even more and more accessible in the times through media, through technology, through just like tapping into what's happening on a global scale. Tell me more about I recognize the important activism of your art to facilitate invitation for us to feel, to inquire about what our soul is saying, what our hearts are saying, to rest. Would you like to share more about that?
Yeah. The global order. It's so interesting that this album that is coming is so centered on water because I feel like the world is on fire.
Yeah.
It is on fire. And we do need all hands on deck to put out these flames and rebuild, which is a whole next conversation. But even as we do that, like the that adage of the flight attendant, we can't keep putting out the flames and doing the work that needs to be done without resting and restoring ourselves to continue doing the work because it is a marathon. And for us to do conscious, intentional healing work and activist work, it needs, I believe, I'm not telling people what to think, but I believe it needs to come from a place of intention in ourselves and the ever continuous healing of ourselves. And so as the world goes bananas, I humbly, ever so humbly offer these songs of, you know, take 5 minutes to just breathe through this river song. And 5 minutes could do a lot. 5 minutes could clear your mind to then make a decision to do an action thing. I think rest is action. You taught me that,
Yes.
especially in this world that makes us want to keep acting. We actually have to restrain ourselves from acting sometimes to just rest until it feels natural.
Right. Yeah, and acting is rest and rest is acting. I've been challenging this response that I find myself saying, that I hear other people saying, where if I've rested during the weekend and on Monday somebody asks me, "How was your weekend?" How automatic it is for me or others to say, "I did nothing." What'd you do? Nothing. But in actuality, right, I rested. I spent quality time with the people around me. I learned about someone's life and feelings and perspective. I hugged and held my sibling and my parents. And like, there's so much that actually happens that capitalism says is nothing. And then we imitate that disregard of rest or of quality time or of quote unquote, non productive activity. So, yes, it is such a disruption to even what activism looks like, right? That activism doesn't necessarily mean always fighting, although certainly we have that and need that. But hearing you say how the world is on fire, and in so many ways it is, right? With climate crisis, with genocide, with violence, with polarization on so many lands, from Gaza to Kuwait to the Congo to the US. Yeah, water. Water is such medicine and the most abundant resource on the planet to,
And the most threatened resource.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Both and fire and water, abundance and threat, like it all exists together somehow.
yeah. In rest as well, we can listen and learn because like with what's happening in Gaza, we should all be learning history right now, continuously. And in the story of Gaza is the story of the world and colonialism and patriarchy. So even in rest, we can keep the fight going by educating ourselves.
Mhm.
So even just taking a break from being on the street striking to read a textbook and not an Instagram post, that is activism. That's good
Mhm.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then there's the communal aspect of it. I'd love to hear from you how community has played out for you in relation to your creativity, in relation to your activism. And I'll just quickly say that you mentioned Creative Somatic Alchemy. That's the Mosaic Eye 3-month program. It's our flagship offering. It is my favorite offering out of Mosaic Eye. And yeah, it is about tapping into that spirit within each of us that we have access to through the wisdom of our bodies and how creative our bodies are in every second of the day and night, and remembering that outside of capitalist values of creativity. And then you mentioned also conscious creators, which is meant for our conscious seed tenders, folks with seeds of businesses or albums or books that they're wanting to water. And you joined both. And yeah, tell us about how that has been for you, and then also other communities that you've been a part of that's helped you steward authentically what you're supposed to be.
Yeah, community. I've been reflecting a lot about that, especially since now that the album is complete, it has cleared the way for me to actually directly look at the trauma of what knocked me off course. And the context of this album too is that I was living a hermit-like experience before last year. I was in Spain in the height of the pandemic. And if people remember, Spain was the second hardest hit country after Italy. It was all over the news. It was quite a time to be alive. And so joining CSA was not only I thought I was just gonna see if I could get my creative spark back. I didn't know if it was gonna work. I wasn't convinced, but I was willing to try and pay for it. And of course, after the first session, I was like, oh my goodness. That was like the first 15 minutes I was crying. I turned off my computer screen and I was like, okay, let me just listen to these beautiful souls share about their lives while I'm just be already feeling connected. So there was that. And the way I think of CSA is that it it lit it added a little bit of sticks, a little bit of leaves, let's say, dry leaves, to the very, very, very baby flames that I had. And by the end of CSA, I wrote two river songs that I'm very, very, very proud of. Someone, it might have been Nico, who mentioned that, hey, we have this conscious creators program coming up. If you have a seed of something, and that was sort of a spark of, I have these songs. I guess I could do something with them, but I don't want to do it alone because I've done it before alone. And that was very instructive. My first album and my first EP were very instructive experiences because I learned to listen to myself in an organic, feel through the dark kind of way. But I knew that I wanted to do this differently. That was my mantra. I want to do things differently. I want to create differently. And Mosaic Eye programs, I view it as my fellow witches, my fellow unicorns. I already knew like this is a safe space. Like if I tell them that the song spoke to me, like they won't laugh at me. It'll be okay. I won't have to explain. They'll just be like, yeah, so I joined, and the first session of Conscious Creators, goodness gracious, this program was the best and the most challenging also in the best way because um being held accountable really makes graceful accountability really made me want to be my best self. even when I was sad. And also, I felt like I couldn't lie. So even when I didn't do the home play, like I had to be honest and be like, guys, I didn't do the whatever that we agreed that we were gonna do. Fortunately, there was that one session that everyone was like, yeah, I didn't really do anything this week either. And but it was really nice to have a container every 2 weeks and every month to come and say, hey, like I made progress on this song, or our last conversation, made me write this other song, and you guys are all the doulas. And also being reflected back by the others of my own progress, which is very easy to put down to myself. And
Yeah.
so regularly being lifted up while in the weeds of this River album was very, very, very just lovely. Just when I think of it, when I think of conscious creators in particular and the process of making this album, I think of grit, which is a word that you gave me. I think of grit and like sort of rolling around in the dirt and molding a piece of clay. I think of being deep in the river, just like, I don't know, doing something, but deep in the river. And I feel really, really warm because as I worked hard, I was held by community, and connection is one of the things that I recognize now is something I really needed, something that I didn't have in my hermit experience. And connection has taught me to be vulnerable and to share. Because I think the first time I shared a song in the container, I had never watched people listen to a fresh song before. And that was when I started this practice of running away from the screen while people were listening. Because when a song is fresh and it's not perfect, it's just the demo, and people are strangers, quote unquote, are listening, I'd be like, it's terrible. But then sometimes there'd be like emotional reactions, like, whoa, this song is my soul, or like other things. And it was very affirming, like, okay, I'm on the right track. Like I know I'm on the right track, but it's nice to be affirmed that, yeah, I'm on the right track. And one thing I'd like to mention, so Mosaic Eye was my online community, but while simultaneous to that was my transition to living here on Trinidad, or living here in Trinidad and Tobago, and finding an in-person creative community and working with two artists in particular who I felt almost instantly connected with them, that I asked each of them, hey, want to work on something together? And going through that process of collaborating and playing, and I'm so blessed. I'm so glad that I had Mosaic Eye because I had this language of, yeah, let's just play, like let's just see, let just the river flow and see what happens. And I would say, and I guess this is a big advertisement for, hey, listeners, do the Mosaic Eye programs, please. But it did give me the tools and the language to work with others in real, I want to say in real life, but in person.
Yeah.
And that was a big takeaway from this River album making process.
Mm. Thank you. Yes. I mean, I just continue to learn how important community is in processing both our challenges and our barriers, and also our successes and our celebrations, even if and especially if we're not able to recognize those successes and celebrations. That's what both Creative Somatic Alchemy and Conscious Creators really emphasizes, that there are multiple configurations of engaging in our work. In CSA, there's large group and small group configurations. In Conscious Creators, where we deepen, there's small group and one-on-one support. And I love that you use both graceful accountability and grit in describing that. Like you really embodied that, and you took that on. You accepted that invitation, because both can coexist so magically. And that's what it takes to steward something with love and with divine timing and with deep listening, in ease and also in devotion. without force, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it
Um,
doesn't mean it's easy, right? There can be ease without it being easy.
I have figured out too with how my process works is I will inhabit grits for a week or two and then I'll put it away. I'll put it down. And there we go back to that conversation about rest. I do need rest away from the song as I am deeply working in it because there is that point where it could be the heavenly chorus and it will sound like noise. And it's not noise, it's just that my ears are tired. My ears need, to refresh. At which points I'll either do something completely different, like go to the beach or paint something or write something or just watch a silly YouTube video. Or I'll work on a different song. And it helps. One thing about album making is it's helpful to work on multiple songs at the same time because then you're still resting from something else while inhabiting grit in another song. So both, yeah, the both and at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah, as I'm learning how to play bansuri, the Indian flute, and tuning into my ear training, like being able to pick up on notes just through listening, I notice at first like I could really get it, and then my capacity is relatively small given that I'm new at it. So after trying to listen to notes and even play the notes on my flute, after 10 to 15 minutes, that ability is completely shot. Like it's like, oh, I have no idea what's happening. What note is that? No, that's not the note. And I'm just noticing that capacity. And I hope over time, depending on my other sense of resourcefulness in my life, I will notice that window expand in different ways. But yeah, just the need for rest to step away and do something else is so necessary to also then let spirit collaborate and work its magic from the spirit of the body to recoup and get to a point physically of being able to pick up on different things. For example, in
absolutely.
ear training, or even just the spirit and muses of creativity that work their magic in a sense with how we relate to the project, whatever that is. So yeah, that generative space is so needed.
Absolutely. I have a very dear friend, Nicole, who works with ceramics, and sometimes I'll enter her studio and she has a sheet over a bunch of work that she's working on. And she'll just be like, "Yeah, I'm not looking at those right now. I'll come back with fresh eyes in about a month." Like she has her own process. And that was validation of, oh yeah, so it's not just musicians who need to refresh their ears, but visual artists have to refresh their eyes.
Yes. I
Yeah.
notice it with writing now too. Like I am really loving the process and creative expression of writing, which has been coming a lot more for me recently, more than even visual art. And I notice with writing, it requires more of a human pace for me. It's certainly not a Insta pace or a social media pace, which was more accessible with, doodles or illustrations. With writing, it really requires me to show up to a piece, and when the words are not coming, when things aren't fluid, I step away, and sometimes I have to step away for a few days, sometimes just for a few hours, to come back and suddenly there's fluidity again, there's flow. So yeah, with writing as well, I think with everything, including relating to people, right? If we're in a conversation, maybe it's tense or it has a lot of emotion, trying to fix the solution and stay in the conversation without taking a contained break doesn't always help, because conversing and relating is also an art form. So I think with anything, we need space. Anything else, Feroza, that you want other artists in whatever mediums or modalities they use to be aware of when it comes to allowing mysticism, allowing space for the muse in whatever form or fashion they show up, and letting that be part of your creative process or a creative process?
Let it be. Said by the late great John Lennon, just let it flow, let it be, which sounds cliche, but it's true. I think allowing yourself to experiment and play and I'm a millennial, so that DD energy from Dexter's Lab. Ooh, what does this button do? Like that. that and figure, be open to what that button does, which in music production, I'm always learning, like, what does this button actually do? Oh, this is a cool effect. Or, oh, what will happen if I mix this paint and that paint, even
Mhm.
if it doesn't make sense? And that's the other thing. It doesn't, the idea that it doesn't make sense. But does it make sense to you? That question of nobody asked for this, but your soul asked for it. Like that's a person. If anything, that's the most important person in your life. Uh,
Yeah.
and embracing the discomfort of undoing our preconditioning of the things that hinder us from flowing into our creative rivers. There's so many things. And I would like to say that the more we do it, the easier it is in one sense, but also the harder it is because then we're called to deepen relationship with creativity, which might mean learning new skills or trying new things, which is always uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But but we're here to grow, right? Not just create. Um, for me personally, an elder asked me, "So are you passionate about music?" And I said, "No, I'm not passionate. I'm not passionate about breathing, but I need to breathe." And that is my relationship with music and creativity. I am, therefore I create, and I create in this way. I suppose that's passion, but I don't use the word passion. Passion
Mhm.
to me is like very fire, very aggressive energy, whereas I am a soul in this human form who is very aware of my purpose to be here in this particular human form, in this particular part of the planet. And I encourage all of the creative people to inquire in their own journey about that, whatever that means. Embrace the unicorn energy and find your fellow unicorns, which is what I did, which is why I feel way more comfortable now than I did at the beginning of my journey. Find your fellow unicorns. They're out there. They're waiting for you. They'll be, joyfully receiving your art. And yeah, it feels
Yeah.
good.
So beautiful, Feroza. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the deeper a relationship we cultivate with the spirit of creativity, also the deeper we're going to be disrupting systems that oppress creativity and life force energy within us. And in that spirit, we need community who also align with that disruption and with that deep relationship cultivation. So I'm so glad you're a part of the Mosaic Eye community and can share your gifts with the world. I'm honored and grateful to be a co-steward with you for healing art.